Hello.
Hi, is that Kris?
Yes, it is.
How long
I've
have you
just
been in
finished.
Kenya?
Well, it's coming up to 18 months, actually.
And you've got, what, another 6 months to go?
Well, I don't know quite yet, but potentially here for another 2 years.
All right. So you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, just a completely different life, and it brings a lot of things into perspective. And yeah, it's just pretty incredible. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, you were back in Melbourne in October doing a show at Northcote, weren't you?
Yeah, I was back for 5 weeks. We just did the one show. Then I don't know, just for fun and to launch, these records, even though they weren't even ready to be launched really, but that was the purpose of it, yeah.
And so have you been doing a lot of writing over in Kenya?
No, not really. Like, I feel like I should, and I feel like I'm almost ready to sort of give it a crack, but things are so different that I don't know. I don't like even just making an observation. I don't know. You kind of just change your mind. So, well, I find I change my mind about things so often here that I think it's easy to do it in injustice. I think a lot of people just will come to Africa or go to a developing country for like a couple of weeks or a month, 2 months. It's much easier to form an opinion the kind of the shorter time you are there. But the longer you're here, the more stuff you experience and the more it constantly challenges your preconceptions and and the conceptions and things that you've arrived at in the meantime. I just feel like the longer I'm here, the less I really feel I understand, but in a good way. Like, it's just a different.
Probably once you get to live the life more, it's hard to make judgments.
Well, exactly. Like, who are we to judge anything anyway? I mean, it's not like Australians are known as the happiest population on earth. I mean, we do pretty well financially and security wise, but I mean, if you interview 10 people on the street about how happy they were, I think you'd find that it's not necessarily up there as in the happiness stakes. So, and here, people might be poor, but this taxi driver of mine said to me one time, here we might be poor, but at least we're free.
Hmm.
And it helps that the weather's always pretty damn good. So,
Well, you and Wally DeBacker started the Basics back in 2002?
no, it was 2001, actually.
All right. Well, it seems at the moment you've taken completely different paths in life.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, in some ways, you can look at it as completely different parts, but, we're both sort of involved in an outreach of sorts. I guess, Wally is reaching out to people with his music, and I'm reaching out to people in a different way.
You're doing it in a very sort of laid back society, poor society, whereas he's in the hustle and bustle and probably living a bit of the high life.
Oh, he's definitely living the high life as opposed to my life, but the hustle and bustle is probably more so here simply because it's just complete chaos here most of the time. So, and Nairobi, for instance, has, the second worst traffic in the world after Mexico City, and everyone's hustling. It's completely crazy. So, but yeah, I mean, we're obviously living very different lives, which is what you're getting at there. So,
And before you went there, you released an EP, didn't you? Patience in the Face of Control.
that's right, I did too. Yeah, I kind of just, because I sort of started recording something, I don't know, I just wanted to I thought, well, look, I don't know how long I'll be here, and I don't really feel like if I came back to it, I'd want to keep going with it. So I thought what was originally meant to be an album sort of just became an EP because they were the only tracks that I was happy enough with. I mean, I still quite like it. I think, considering the time frame in which I slapped it together, I think it comes across well. But it was more about just finalising that. I'd started it with my ex as well, and I just wanted to sort of close that chapter by putting that thing out and then whatever. So, yeah.
Back in 2008, you appeared on the Australia Day celebrations on Channel 9, which got you an Australian government grant to work with underprivileged groups in Australia, like a lot of Indigenous communities. And that's what's led you to where you are now?
Not quite true. Yes, we appeared on the Australia Day thing, but that had nothing to do with the grant. The grant we actually got, I'd actually got two grants before that for doing exactly that, like reaching out to remote and regional high schools and in Indigenous communities. But what you said was right, except the grant didn't come out of the fact that we played at the concert. That was, we still had to write it and present it and budget it and do all the boring things that you do when you're getting a grant. Yeah, there you go.
Was it something that the three of you in the band actually all were passionate to do, or is this something that you've led the whole way?
Good question, actually. I don't really know. I think we were all passionate about it, about the idea, but I definitely led it insofar as, writing the grant and constructing the itinerary. But we all, were involved in actually sort of implementing it and, making sure everyone was on board and logistically and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, we've toured a lot we've toured a lot in Outback Australia. So we're all very aware of how disadvantaged culturally and musically a lot of communities can be. So I don't know, it just kind of came together. It was so long ago now. I'm racking my brain trying to remember where we were at like 4 or 5 years ago because I'm struggling to remember.
It's a past life for you.
I've lived a few lives since then, actually. So, yeah.
It sounds like you would actually have a lot of difficulty stepping back into your former life here in Australia in the band.
It was pretty easy when I was playing the gig, but I have adventure at my heart. But, living in Melbourne or living in Sydney or whatever isn't really my cup of tea at the moment. I mean, of course, that could change it. But for now, I'm very, very happy to be here and doing this.
Well, fast forward 2 years and say you are finished there in Kenya. Do you have any idea where your next step would be?
Yeah, well, I want to do the delegates course for Red Cross so I can take shorter term contracts and work in crisis zones around the world. So that's my next thing. But as for the band, I mean, while he's mentioned getting back together, I'd really like to make another record at some point. I don't know about doing a lot of touring or anything like that, but aside from, this kind of best of thing that's just come out, Ingredients and Leftovers, which will be like, B-sides and outtakes and stuff, which is coming out in January, I think, we could still, make some pretty cool music together. So I wouldn't say that it's a definite, but I'd say it's on the cards.
You've actually got a free download through your website for an album, The Basics, which was recorded live at Northcote Social Club.
Yeah, back in, I think it was recorded or released or something back in 2010. So, yeah, I mean, I reckon it's pretty awesome. And, there's been, I think we've probably had about 10,000 downloads or something like that on that one. So people dig it and it's pretty indicative of what we do. It's got a good vibe and it's free. So what the hell are you waiting for?
Yeah, thebasics.com.au. It's actually really good quality too for a live recording.
Yeah, it was recorded with the intention of, making it as close to something of a studio album as possible. There were songs on there that we had never recorded before. So we had a full recording setup, and then it was actually mixed by our good friend Peter Cobbin at Abbey Road Studios in London. So it was given the full treatment. It's not just it wasn't slapped together at all, which would beg the question why it's free. But I don't know, we're just generous guys.
You've actually covered a lot of songs from a lot of big name artists. What was your choice to cover? What was the song that you really wanted to cover?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer, actually, because, I mean, we started out, the way Wally and I started out was playing covers and a handful of originals. In fact, probably the first few gigs we did were only covers. So it wasn't like we just covered a song here and there. And when we were doing touring, even for many years after that, because, a lot of Outback shows you do 2 or 3 hours worth of playing. So you tend to play a lot of covers in there. So what were my choices? I don't know, stuff like, I don't even remember what we would do. Old Man by Neil Young. That was always a killer, actually. That was one song that we really owned, and we've done a lot of shows in Tamworth, and there would always be guys there sort of saying, There was one guy who said there's only two people who can do that song properly, and that's Neil Young and you. And that was a real compliment. I've always liked doing that song, and Neil Young in general.
Everyone knows, of course, that Wally DeBacker is doing Gautier, but Tim Heath, he's still got his band Blood Red Bird going?
I think so. I haven't spoken to Tim for the last month, so I assume so.
You've enjoyed a lot of airplay on like TV shows and that too.
Yeah.
Is it exciting when you hear your music being played on a TV show?
Of course. Like, it's great. I mean, the visual medium is I actually wanted to get into film before I wanted to get into music as like a scriptwriter or a director or something like that. So, yeah, like it's always really cool.
Why don't you make a documentary in South Africa? Everyone else does.
Well, I'm in Kenya, not in South Africa. But
Sorry, Kenya.
And a lot of people are like, oh, you should write a blog or you should do this or that. And I just find it really passé because I don't think these Western eyes are so used to this place that it's always going to end up being somehow condescending or, arrogant. You can just misinterpret this place so easily. Sometimes I feel like there should be less white people who travel here because they just get it completely wrong most of the time. They don't really understand this place at all. Not to say that I'm any sort of expert, but I certainly know that I don't know what I think I know.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot of self-reflection over there.
I live in the bush, so yeah, I mean, it's unavoidable. So,
well, what's it like where you live? Is it like really hustle and bustle, or can you walk outside and see tigers roaming past?
Probably in between that. So, I mean, there aren't any tigers in Kenya, but on the way home to Nairobi, which is up the road a bit, there's like giraffe and zebra and gazelles and, you see the occasional, warthog or whatever. There's plenty of wildlife around. And not far from here is the famed Masai Mara, which is where all the bloated, fat white people come to get ripped off, basically. So it's pretty bush. And in the actual fact, the funny thing is that the Kenyan bush is not much different to the Australian bush. The same sort of colours in the soil, the same sort of landscape, a lot of the same trees. We have gum trees and eucalyptus trees here. It's really just the fauna that is different, different people and different animals. But when I was flying in here the first time, 18 months ago, it was like, I was a bit disappointed. I was like, this just looks like Australia. I was hoping for something a bit more. Like, we were flying over Somalia, and that's really super desert, that's proper desert. I was like, oh, this is it. But then I was like, oh, well, this is a little bit familiar. And often, there have been times when, I'll just, when there's no one else around or whatever, and I'm just looking out and it just looks like Australia. The place that I live in was actually the very first European settlement in East Africa, or British settlement, I should say, in East Africa, before they even built Nairobi. So some of the buildings here are like the oldest buildings in this whole area, and then the rest is just kind of developed afterwards. So it has this like a certain familiarity, a very much unfamiliarity at the same time.
What are you doing on a day-to-day basis there for the Red Cross?
Well, it's seasonal. It depends on what is going on. Basically, we're moving into the time of year where food security is a real issue, because now is the rainy season. Now is meant to be the rainy season, I should say. And if the rains don't come, which they often don't, or they come too heavy, and then you can get flooding and drowning of crops. There's lots of variables there. So, over the next 2 or 3 months, there'll be a heavy focus on food security, which is making sure that, people can eat, I guess. And the rest of the year is, there's not really like a structured ambulance service in Kenya. There's a couple of private ones that are based in Nairobi, but out here in the bush, we do all the road safety. Whenever there's an accident, we attend and do what we can to, we're all trained first, senior first aid people. So that sort of stuff. And if there's flooding, then we do, search and rescue. People go missing. We look after, child protection. blood donation, which is probably the one thing that Australian people are familiar with Red Cross about, is blood donation. But here it's just one of many, many things. I don't know, refugees. We run Dadaab refugee camp, which is up the road, which has 500,000 people that have fled the fighting in Somalia. Yeah, I mean, it's huge. The mandate is huge. So what I do from day to day can vary drastically depending on what the events are. We're coming up to an election in March. Last election there was dreadful things that happened, and there are people who are coming up to being on trial for crimes against humanity who are perpetrated, or alleged to have perpetrated those crimes. Election time is always a bit of a crazy time.
Do you feel vulnerable much of the time, or do you feel reasonably safe there?
I feel reasonably safe, but I have a lot of colleagues who are white women, and I'm 6'3", quite reasonably well built compared to a Kenyan, so people don't tend to try and take me on. But I've got a lot of colleagues who are women who do feel vulnerable here. So that's, it's definitely still very much a male-dominated society here, which has significant downsides, unfortunately. It can be a bit of a boys' club. But as for me, I'm fine.
That's good. And what music do you listen to over there? Do you listen to Western music or African music or both?
I listen mostly to African music. So there's every tribe tends to have it like a local kind of sound. And on first listen, they all sound very similar, but you learn what the differences are. So the tribe here, which is the dominant tribe in the area that I'm in, Kikamba, has its own style of music, which you should look up. Just look up Kikamba music on YouTube and have a look at some of them. The videos are always the same. It's always just like 3 people dancing, then back to the singer, then 5 people dancing, then back to the singer, then back to the first 3 people. And the songs are very formulaic. But if you understood the words, you'd find they're kind of a bit cheeky, a bit humorous, a little bit edgy, a little bit political, and it's the sort of the sound of the common person here, the Wananchi. It's cool. I really like it. I mean, I listen to some Western music.
Well, just between you and me, do you listen to your Basics CDs very often?
No, God, no. Well, obviously, putting this new ingredients CD together and leftovers, I found myself listening to a lot of the stuff again. So recently I have, but on a day-to-day basis, definitely not.
And you can be found at thebasics.com.au, where you can get the free download of the Basics CD. And you've also got your Facebook, which is just The Basics on Facebook.
That's right. And we've got Twitter, and we've got still on MySpace. I think we've still got a MySpace.
You've got a Bandcamp, thebasics.bandcamp.com.
And then you can get most of our stuff from there, both digitally or physically. You got some options there, and that's where you download the album as well.
It's been really great talking to you. Thank you for giving me your time and distracting yourself from your job for a little while.
It's a pleasure anytime. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.